wonderful conversation. I want to just thank you so much all for being here on this last day of, or last week of the year, and celebrating the fantastic research accomplishments of the 2012 Loundy Human Rights Project students. I'd like to quickly just thank a few people and describe the work of the project before introducing our speakers, most of whom are sitting in the audience, but it's all right. I wanted to first and foremost thank Joe Loundy, who is my partner in crime sitting over there. He's the founder of the Loundy Human Rights Project, a program that's unique in the nation in allowing for comparative study of human rights in almost all years. We go abroad as well, so we study a given human rights issue here intensively with scholars from across the nation and across the region, as well as activists, and then we go abroad and have comparable seminars abroad. This year we just focused in on Chicago, but we do have a comparative element, which we'll be seeing in the research that's being presented. We rotate among several interrelated social justice issues. Most of them have had to do with basic civil rights and security and the apparent tensions between those. And so we've been focusing on the problem of wrongful convictions. And as one of our speakers a few weeks ago, coming from San Francisco, said, really Chicago is just the epicenter of wrongful conviction work in the country. So there's not a better place that this could be being studied. Wrongful conviction work by the Chicago Innocence Project and the Center on Wrongful Convictions was instrumental in leading to the end of the death penalty in Illinois, as was the incredibly brave reporting of John Conroy about the John Burge torture scandal as it was emerging in the 90s. And so people central to this fight have been our speakers in the last 2 years. So we've had exposure to really the folks that have been making the most important changes happen in this area. I want to thank Dean Lynn Weiner, who is sadly in her last year as dean, and I don't think will ever be able to be paralleled at all, and has been just absolutely instrumental in helping us get started in the wonderful work that we're doing. Dean Julie Rowan, who is the main reason that people know anything about what we're doing, and Associate Dean Mike Ensdorf, who was responsible for the powerful show in the Gage Gallery that we were set against, the Juvenile Injustice show by Richard Ross, where our speaker series was. And I want to thank Nilla, my GA in the back, who doesn't like to be thanked, because I like to torment her. And now, most importantly, I'd like to introduce our researchers, and you'll get to hear their names again as they come up, so I'm not going to force them to all stand, but it's Abigail Moore, Jonathan Shanahan, Gilda Arrington, Chelsea Moore, Emily Miller, Wendy DeLeon, Clay Stambaugh, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, Dexter Canty and Erica Edwards. And we have one other one, Monica Sawinska, who is unfortunately extremely sick today and so couldn't be here. And I spoke to her and she really sounded like she was doing all kinds of horrible things, so I'll just leave it at that. But she had a really great presentation. I wanted to also point out, these are students that are doing all kinds of really cool stuff. I know several people are graduating this year. Can you raise your hands for graduating? Okay, so 4 out of the 10 that are presenting today, and I know 3 people just took the LSAT, so really need to be congratulated for just being like alive and still coherent mostly. And that was Emily and Chelsea and Erica. Did anybody else take it that I don't know about? So, oh, sorry, you did? Yes. So congratulations to all 4 of you. And then finally, our distinguished panelists, and I'll try to keep this relatively short. But there's a lot of great things to say about them. First of all, on the far end, Roosevelt University Assistant Professor of Psychology, Sherry Berkowitz. Professor Berkowitz, who received her PhD in 2009 from UC Irvine, studies how people misremember details of events and in some cases develop false beliefs and memories of entire events that never actually happened to them. She is especially interested in the application of this work to the legal system, and her other research interests include eyewitness testimony, memory for trauma, false accusations, and wrongful convictions. Without Sherry, we would not have had such a distinguished and insightful lineup for our distinguished speaker series the last 2 years, as she has studied with and is now joining the ranks of the most pioneering researchers in the field of forensic psychology. Sherry also was my co-pilot on last year's London trip. Students regularly comment on what a great teacher she is, combining copious expertise with great warmth and approachability. And as she likes to say, on a personal note, I couldn't ask for a better colleague or friend. Phil Payne, on the end closest to me, is a 2009 Northwestern law graduate who worked in the Center on Wrongful Convictions for 2 of his 3 law school years. He has worked at the Office of the State Appellate Defender here in Chicago for the past 2 years, where he now 3 years, that would be, where he represents indigent criminal defendants on appeal from all manner of convictions. He remains involved with the CWC and its cause through the Justice Council. Maybe one of you guys could just say a couple words about the Justice Council. Katie Pellet, in the middle, is licensed to practice law in Illinois and currently serves as a law clerk to the Honorable Mary L. Mikva. She is president of the Center on Wrongful Convictions Justice Council and a member of the Young Professional Board of the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. In a previous life, she worked as a journalist. And I'm going to open another one of these windows. It's actually really warm up here, but feel free, any of the speakers, to adjust these however you would like to do. And I'm going to turn things over to Erica Edwards in just a moment, but Katie, would you like to say a little bit about the Justice Council?
Sure. Is this mic on? So Phil and a number of our colleagues and I founded the Justice Council a couple years ago, essentially as a way to stay involved in wrongful convictions work after having graduated from Northwestern, because it was something we all felt really spurred on our interest in the law and our passion for the law. But there weren't a lot of ways for us to get involved right out of law school. There's kind of a space in between when you graduate and then when you're important enough to make all of your own decisions about your career, where you don't get to be involved in this sort of work quite so much. So the Justice Council is the junior board of the Center on Wrongful Convictions. We do projects to raise awareness of issues surrounding wrongful convictions, and we raise money. So I hope that come this summer, I guess it is, you guys can maybe come to our event and learn a little bit more about the Justice Council.
They're on Facebook, and I can also give you like Katie's contact
Yes.
info. Aren't you glad I just volunteered that?
Yeah, thank you. We are on Facebook, and you should like our page.
All right, so I'm going to turn things over to the actual stars of the show, and I think either Erica or Jonathan is up first. So, whichever. Sure.
All right, so my name is Erica Edwards, and the thing that I looked at was eyewitness testimony. A few of my questions were what leads to erroneous eyewitness testimony, what role do the police play in erroneous eyewitness testimony, and what can the criminal justice system do to prevent this in the future? So first, I just want to give a background on what erroneous eyewitness testimony is. So first of all, there are several situational factors that lead to erroneous eyewitness testimony, including such things as weapon focus. So this is when a criminal act happens and the eyewitness tends to focus more on the weapon than the suspect. There's also the cross-race effect, which says that we have a harder time identifying those outside of our own race. And then stress, which also puts us at a risk for identifying people correctly. There's also post-event misinformation, which the police are very involved in. So such things as lineups can affect the way that we remember things. So it's important for us to do things like double-blind lineups, where a third party comes in to conduct the lineup. Also, simultaneous versus sequential lineups. Simultaneous is when everyone's there together in the lineup, and then sequential is when you show one person at a time. And there's also unconscious transference, which can also affect the way we remember things, as we can take previous memories and then put them into our current memory. So for Chicago, we are in Illinois required to tape all interrogations involving murder. So this is important because if we tape them, we can go back and look at, possible coercive techniques that the police used, and be able to look if it's faulty eyewitness testimony. They do suggest and recommend that Chicago uses double-blind lineups, however, it's not always utilized. Also, the police in Chicago have a really big police culture and are very resistant to change. A study that I looked at, they utilized simultaneous lineups, but the police didn't always do it, and they found loopholes to go around it. Also, juries, they place a lot of weight on eyewitness testimony, and juries aren't always educated on eyewitness problems. So for the UK, it really stands in contrast to Chicago. The read technique is often used in Chicago, which is a really coercive interrogation technique. And in the UK, they use something called PEACE, which stands for Preparation and Planning, Engage and Explain, Account, Closure, and Evaluate. So it's a less coercive technique. It's more on information gathering and truth seeking. In the UK, all interrogations must be taped, and they don't use juries as often, which means that evidence is being heard by educated professionals. The UK also introduced something called PACE, which is the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which uses the double-blind lineups that I previously mentioned. And they also use video and photos in lineups, which is very beneficial. It gives a little less anxiety to the eyewitness. They don't have as much pressure. They don't feel like the criminal can see them. They don't feel like they necessarily need to identify someone. And they also utilize the sequential lineups, which have been found to be better. So overall, the UK has addressed a lot more of these eyewitness issues, and they've implemented changes that have made reforms such as PACE, the use of expert witnesses, and less use of juries. So there are some changes that the US can make. They can have a less emphasis on the adversarial system, which could lead to less wrongful convictions. So if they focus more on, in the inquisitorial system, they'll have more of a reliance on truth finding and information seeking. And also experts need to be used more to educate juries about eyewitness testimony. And we need more reform on the police, such as lineup procedures and interrogations.